This tale revolves around Dante Leonardis, whose life unfolds as one of the most eventful and dramatic stories in the Empire's history. Dante's early years were marked by abandonment, as her father, the Crown Prince, acknowledges her as the product of a fleeting romance. Left by his mother in a distant city, Dante grew up surviving on the unforgiving streets. She resorted to stealing and scavenging for food to make ends meet. Dante's life takes a significant turn at the age of 12 when a man notices her consistent presence in the same location and offers to train her in swordsmanship. Initially, the instructor has low expectations, but he soon realizes Dante's hidden potential. He invites her to become his student, providing her with the opportunity to leave behind her life of poverty and pursue a path in swordsmanship. The instructor not only becomes Dante's mentor but also her adoptive parent, giving her the name she still carries. Dante wholeheartedly commits to her training, enduring each challenging day with unwavering determination. While her journey is inspiring, it's filled with hardships that she never shies away from. By the time Dante reaches the age of 19, her beloved instructor passes away, leaving her with no inheritance. Money becomes Dante's primary pursuit from that point forward. She decides to participate in swordsmanship tournaments, determined to never return to her former life as a beggar. With her steadfast resolve, Dante wins numerous tournaments and eventually joins a mercenary group to fight in wars. Her heroic actions, including sealing the evil dragon Crusech, solidify her reputation as a legendary figure. At the age of 23, Dante receives a summons from the emperor, who turns out to be her biological father. He grants her the right to use his surname, Leonardis, marking a significant moment in Dante's remarkable journey. Dante questions the emperor about the benefits of joining the imperial family, considering that many desire her at that moment. She lays out her conditions, including the demand for an independent territory with her own manor, 10 million gold coins, and 10 horses. After some negotiation, the Crown Prince reluctantly agrees to Dante's terms. Despite refusing the Crown Prince's request to be his successor, Dante's half-siblings continue to conspire against her. Frustrated and angered by their actions, Dante ultimately decides to become the Empress Regnant. Tragically, at the age of 33, Dante passes away, but she has no regrets as she lived her life to the fullest. 500 years later, Dante is reincarnated as a girl with brilliant silver hair and sparkling sapphire eyes. She is born as the beloved youngest daughter of Duke Farisca's household in this new life, and her name is Helena. Remarkably, Helena retains all the memories from her past life. In the first decade of Helena's second life, she constantly receives praise for her maturity and her ability to learn things independently. However, as time goes on, Helena begins to grow bored with her life, losing her enthusiasm for everything. Her parents in this life are much more loving and caring than those in her previous one. Despite her disappointment and lack of enthusiasm, they try to reassure Helena that she will eventually discover her passion. Helena, on the other hand, starts pondering why she has been reborn and seeks ways to find purpose and excitement in her life. The following afternoon, Helena engages in a conversation with her elder brother, 13-year-old Leonard Farisca. While talking, Helena's attention is drawn to a sword in Leonard's room, prompting her to inquire about it. Leonard informs Helena that he's about to have a swordplay lesson. Curious, Helena delves deeper into the details and learns that Leonard's instructor has initiated his training with sparring. Helena finds this revelation somewhat dubious, as she believes that starting swordsmanship training with sparring may not be the best approach for a beginner. So, she politely requests Leonard if she can be a spectator during his lesson, which he readily accepts. They convene in the second-floor hall of the ducal manor, where Leonard extends an offer to Helena to join him in learning swordsmanship. However, despite Leonard's enthusiasm, Helena has little inclination to follow this path. Soon after, their swordplay instructor, Batera, arrives and introduces himself to Helena. Leonard explains that Helena wishes to observe their lesson. After evaluating Helena, Batera, sharing his belief that women and swords aren't a good fit, dissuades her from pursuing swordsmanship. This conversation leads to discussions about Dante Leonardis, with Batera casting doubt on the authenticity of most of Dante's achievements. As Batera's persistent annoyance begins to grate on Helena's patience, she struggles to contain her growing anger. In the midst of this tension, Leonard intervenes. Firmly and decisively, he reminds Batera that Helena's life choices are her own, making it clear that it is not his place to dictate her decisions. This exchange serves as a pivotal moment in Helena's journey as she begins to assert her autonomy and carve her own path in life, appreciating Leonard's support and encouragement along the way. In response to Leonard's newfound confidence, Batera issues a challenge, demanding that Leonard defeat him in combat, if he intends to challenge Batera's views. This surprising confrontation leaves Helena astonished at Batera's cold and unyielding demeanor, especially considering Leonard's status as a novice. The lesson begins, and Helena, inspired by this unexpected turn of events, becomes determined to find any means possible to overcome Batera and prove her point, determined to make a lasting impression. Prior to the sparring session, Leonard's self-esteem had already been eroded, and the entire match was dominated by the instructor, Batera. Helena keenly observes that Batera has complete control over Leonard and relishes in the act of humiliating him. While it might appear to an outsider that Batera is an enthusiastic instructor, Helena sees through his true intentions. She also discerns that Batera lacks true mastery of swordsmanship. As the sparring session takes a break, Helena calls Leonard aside and offers him advice. She recommends that Leonard focus on observing Batera's footwork during their next match. Helena explains that there will be a specific moment in the duel when Batera extends his left foot a bit too far, and she encourages Leonard to target that vulnerable spot when the opportunity arises. The next round of sparring commences shortly thereafter. As the next duel between Leonard and Batera commences, Batera observes Leonard's newfound confidence. The battle unfolds, and initially, Leonard faces some difficulties when directly pitted against Batera. However, as Batera begins to exhibit the patterns Helena pointed out, Leonard promptly focuses on Batera's footwork. In his very first attempt, Leonard successfully executes the maneuver, causing Batera to tumble to the ground. Helena proclaims Leonard as the winner of their duel, but Batera reacts poorly, accusing Leonard of cheating. Despite Helena's efforts to calm him down, Batera loses control, leading Helena to believe he's beyond redemption. In response, Helena retrieves Leonard's sword and challenges Batera to fight her. He agrees, and it becomes evident that Helena is gaining the upper hand in their duel. In an unexpected turn, Helena shifts from being a student to becoming the instructor herself, taking charge of Batera's combat education. She effortlessly outmatches Batera in their sparring sessions, showcasing her superior combat skills. As Helena realizes that Batera had been subjecting Leonard to humiliation rather than imparting essential swordsmanship principles, her frustration intensifies. She openly expresses her dissatisfaction, even going as far as to yawn during their duel, much to Batera's irritation. This pivotal moment signifies the growth of 10-year-old Helena Fariska, who not only defends her loved ones but also discovers her life's purpose in her current existence. It exemplifies her evolution from Dante Lenatus into the resolute and protective Helena Fariska, someone who will fiercely confront anyone who dares to harm those she holds dear, whether in her past or present life. In a swift decision, Helena suggests that they abandon swordsmanship in favor of embroidery, and promptly dismisses Batera from his teaching role, driven by her frustration and disappointment. This marks the moment when 10-year-old Helena Fariska, formerly known as Dante Lenatus, takes on the responsibility of instructing Leonard in swordsmanship. It signifies her discovery of purpose and a new direction in her current life. Helena excitedly shares her newfound purpose in life with her parents, which is to teach Leonard swordplay. Unfortunately, her parents do not grant her permission to do so. About a week later, in Duke Fariska's library, Helena's father reveals that he conducted an investigation into the former swordsmanship instructor, Batera, whom Helena had dismissed. During the inquiry, it was discovered that Batera had a history of academic failures during his time at a prestigious school. The acquaintance who had recommended Batera to Helena's father repeatedly apologized for the mistake. Helena's father had initially trusted the establishment's prestigious reputation but narrowly avoided becoming a victim of their deceitful practices. Helena, upon hearing all this, lets out a sigh of relief, remarking that it's fortunate they discovered Batera's lack of skill early on. Subsequently, Helena and her father discuss her teaching Leonard swordplay. Helena's father mentions that a guest around Leonard's age will be visiting their territory the following week. He asks Helena if she can train Leonard to a level where he can spar with and defeat this upcoming guest. Helena's father informs her that Prince Caesar, their upcoming guest, will be staying at their estate for the summer. Helena takes this as an opportunity to challenge herself and begins preparing diligently. The next day, Prince Caesar arrives at their estate, and Helena and Leonard wait in the hallway to greet him. Leonard asks Helena if she can see the color of Caesar's eyes and mentions that people from the House of Grey are known for their red eyes. They greet Caesar in a formal and royal manner, but Caesar clearly dislikes the insincerity of this greeting. In response, Helena extends her hand for a modern handshake, intending to offer a more genuine welcome. However, this unconventional gesture initially infuriates Caesar, who perceives it as disrespect. Helena, quick to adapt to the situation, proposes that they establish a better rapport and stay on good terms during Caesar's stay in the coming months. This decision marks the beginning of a potentially complex relationship between Helena and Prince Caesar as they navigate their differences and strive for mutual understanding. Shortly after the tense handshake between Caesar and Leonard, Helena observes Caesar's attempt to assert dominance through a firm grip. In response, Helena firmly grasps Caesar's hand during their handshake, demonstrating her own strength. The atmosphere becomes charged with tension as a subtle power struggle unfolds between Helena and Caesar. Despite the tension, both Helena and Caesar express their eagerness for the day of the duel, where they hope to settle once and for all who holds the upper hand in their budding rivalry. This competitive spirit and desire to prove themselves as dominant figures set the stage for a potentially intense showdown in the future. After Caesar's departure, Helena's mother approaches her daughter to offer some guidance. She advises Helena not to treat Caesar in the same way she interacts with his peers. Helena's mother explains that Caesar might be going through a difficult period due to his mother's recent passing. Helena, on the other hand, believes that her initial meeting with Caesar went relatively well. She also begins to piece together the real reason behind Prince Caesar's visit. The official narrative is that the emperor sent him to Faresca's estate for consolation following the empress's death, portraying Caesar as in need of solace from the gentle souls in the region. However, Helena senses that there may be a different, more complex truth lurking beneath the surface. Helena understands that following Empress's demise, there isn't a sufficiently influential faction within the imperial palace capable of safeguarding the young prince. This is likely why the emperor sent Caesar away, to confront those who pose a threat to the prince. In response, Helena decides to outmaneuver Caesar in his own game, but only in discreet locations where adults won't pry. Meanwhile, Caesar approaches and inquires Helena about her recent scolding by her mother. Helena confirms this, acknowledging the incident. Caesar then reassures her not to fret about it and expresses his indifference toward her earlier misbehavior. In addition, Helena explains to Caesar that she understands the purpose of his visit. Caesar eventually confides in Helena, admitting that he recognizes he's become a burden to the Faresca family. He's aware that even though they've distanced themselves from politics, his presence with them implies that the Farescas are openly opposing House Valera. Additionally, Caesar clarifies that when he mentioned an insincere greeting earlier, he was actually hoping for a less warm reception. Inwardly, Helena begins to comprehend that she might have been the one in the wrong, but she chooses to ignore it, focusing instead on the impending spar. Later, while Helena is giving Leonard a lesson in swordplay, Leonard suggests that she reconcile with Caesar. After considering this, Helena realizes that she should assess her opponent's skills and agrees to make amends with Caesar. Shortly after, Helena approaches the location of Caesar's swordplay lesson with the intent to evaluate his fighting style and uncover any potential vulnerabilities. Caesar graciously grants her permission to observe, and the training session commences. As Helena watches, she discerns Caesar's remarkable proficiency in swordplay, recognizing it as a reflection of his innate talent, mirroring her own abilities. Moreover, she comes to a stark realization that Leonard would likely be severely outmatched in a duel against Caesar. Caesar's exceptional swordsmanship would make it exceedingly difficult for Leonard to endure even a minute in combat against him, and Helena gains a deeper appreciation of Caesar's skill. After Caesar takes a break from his training, Helena approaches him, genuinely impressed by his exceptional swordplay skills. She then surprises him with a proposal for a friendly spar. Caesar, taken aback by this unexpected offer, expresses concern that Helena might get hurt, which could jeopardize his standing with Duke Faresca. However, Helena is resolute in her determination to uncover Caesar's weaknesses, assuring him that she can handle the spar. Caesar remains hesitant, voicing his worry about Helena's well-being during the match. In response, Helena suggests adding a prize for the winner to sweeten the deal. She proposes that the victor can ask the other party to fulfill one request, adding an element of incentive to their friendly duel. Upon hearing Helena's intriguing offer, Caesar can't resist and promptly accepts her proposal, leading to the commencement of their sparring session. Additionally, they both receive advice to exercise caution during their spar, intensifying the atmosphere with a sense of intimidation. Furthermore, Helena devises a plan to initiate her attack on Caesar's pelvis, recognizing it as the most challenging area to defend. However, Caesar not only swiftly parries Helena's strike but also counters with a riposte, leaving Helena visibly surprised. As the spar unfolds, both Helena and Caesar appear to be evenly matched in terms of skill, with neither of them able to breach the other's defenses. As the spar continues, Caesar begins to realize that Helena is far from a novice. She displayed exceptional skill in swordplay. As their exchange of blows progresses, Helena grows increasingly astonished because, despite her deliberate attempts to target Caesar's most challenging defensive positions, he instinctively blocks her strikes. Frustration builds within Helena, leading her to employ a genuine combat move in an attempt to best Caesar. However, Caesar responds swiftly and effectively, defends against Helena's impending attack with his right arm. The spar takes an unexpected turn, and just as the tension reaches its peak, Caesar's trainer, Hamilton, intervenes, declaring the duel as a draw. Furthermore, Caesar couldn't help but express his frustration with his trainer, believing he had the potential to emerge victorious in the duel. He remarks that it has been one of the most competitive sparring matches he has experienced in a while. Interestingly, Helena appears to share similar sentiments, recognizing the intensity and challenge of the bout. In the midst of these thoughts, Helena finds great satisfaction in teaching Leonard. She marvels at the unpredictability of Caesar's moves, realizing that his charm lay in his ability to keep opponents guessing. This introspection leads Helena to wonder if this was how her own instructor felt when he first discovered her talent. In light of these reflections, Helena now harbors a desire to mentor and guide Leonard in his journey. Later in the evening, news spreads that Caesar has opted to skip dinner due to his fatigue. Helena, however, remains skeptical as she vividly remembers her wooden sword striking Caesar's arm during their spar. Caesar had acted as if the injury was insignificant at the time, but Helena's suspicions linger. Despite her belief that it might not be serious, her worry compels her to pay Caesar a visit and assess his condition. Upon entering Caesar's room, Helena immediately discerns the gravity of the situation. His arm is broken. This discovery fills Helena with guilt as she acknowledges the unintentional harm that she caused him. Anxious about his well-being, Helena inquires if Caesar has received proper treatment for his injury. In response, Caesar informs Helena that Hamilton had summoned a physician who tended to him earlier. Helena empathizes with Caesar's pain, having broken a finger herself in the past. However, she quickly changes the topic, realizing that delving into discussions about her past life might not be appropriate. As their conversation deepens, Helena and Caesar express their mutual affection for each other. Caesar points out that their earlier spar wasn't entirely fair, noting that he had observed Helena holding back her final blow to spare him from a more serious injury. Intrigued, Helena asks Caesar why he had chosen to block her wooden sword with his arm, to which Caesar explains that he had no idea what unconventional request Helena might have made if she had emerged victorious. In turn, Helena poses the same question to Caesar, and she learns that he would have asked her to address each other by their names. Helena relates to Caesar's feelings, having experienced a similar situation in her past life where everyone addressed her by her royal title rather than her given name. She had attempted to change this by asking Erez to call her by her name, but he had declined. Recognizing Caesar's desire for a more personal connection, Helena agrees to address him by his name. In return, she requests that Caesar spar with her occasionally. Caesar's genuine happiness at Helena's willingness to use his name is evident, and Helena astutely observes this positive shift in his demeanor. Consequently, Caesar decides to take a break from training until his hand heals. The trio, Leonard, Caesar, and Helena, begins gathering to play cards almost daily. Leonard had initially suggested this as a way to accommodate Caesar, but they grow weary of it in about 5 days. To exacerbate matters, the rainy season starts in full swing. Caesar expresses his desire to go outside, as the humidity is making him feel uncomfortable. Hamilton explains that during such thunderous weather, a ghost is rumored to appear in the ducal state. On summer nights, when it's pouring outside, Hamilton tells the kids that there's a popular belief that the lady in the blue dress always appears in the cellar without fail. However, Helena dismisses this as nonsense, firmly stating her disbelief in ghosts. Hamilton goes on to explain that this is why Duke Faresca prohibits anyone from going down to the cellar when it's raining. When Caesar asks Leonard about this, Leonard confirms that Duke Faresca indeed forbids them from going down during heavy rain. As they continue discussing these eerie stories about the lady in the blue dress, a sudden knock on the door startles Leonard and Caesar. It turns out that the informant has come to the door to inform Hamilton that there is something important he needs to discuss regarding the carriage. As the discussion continues, Caesar asserts his belief in ghosts, claiming to have seen some in the imperial palace. He goes on to describe the legend of the evil dragon Crucech, a creature sealed away by Empress Dante Lenatus. Caesar explains that when the sun disappears, Crucech is said to reappear, roaming in search of a body to reincarnate into. After some deliberation, they decide to investigate the existence of ghosts for themselves. Helena, however, firmly declines to accompany them, reiterating her disbelief in ghosts. Despite her initial reluctance, Helena finds herself provoked and becomes a part of this impromptu ghost hunting party. Upon reaching the door leading down to the cellar, they discover that it's locked and the key is nowhere to be found. Helena steps in to help, using a hairpin to skillfully open the door. As they venture deeper into the tunnel, they discover a waterway inside. While examining it, they suddenly encounter what they believe to be the ghosts. Startled, they make quite a commotion, and their escapade into the cellar is soon discovered by everyone. As a consequence, Helena, Leonard, and Caesar find themselves facing punishment. Helena attempts to rationalize what they have seen, suggesting that it might have been a mirage. She explains that a significant temperature difference in an area can create mirages. However, Caesar counters her argument, pointing out that there was no object in the cellar that could have caused such a reflection. A few days later, Hamilton intervenes to clear up the children's doubts. He explains that what they had seen was simply a reflection from mosaic tiles and assures them that there are no ghosts. This revelation leads to a mixture of relief and embarrassment among the three friends. This shared experience brings Helena, Leonard, and Caesar closer together, creating a bond between them as they had collectively navigated the mysterious cellar and discovered the truth behind their ghostly encounter. Caesar's arm has fully healed, and it's now the time for the summer solstice festival in Alpentis, where the Farisca ducal manor is located. While Helena is in the midst of teaching Leonard swordplay, Caesar inquires whether Helena plans to attend the festival. Helena firmly declines the invitation, remarking that there are essentially three types of people who enjoy such festivals: children, pickpockets, and child pickpockets. Caesar proceeds to explain his predicament, highlighting how Hamilton never allows him to go anywhere alone and incessantly nags him over even the smallest matters. Leonard comprehends the situation and proposes a potential solution. If both he and Helena accompany Caesar to the festival, Hamilton might be more inclined to grant permission. However, Helena remains resolute in her refusal, declaring that she wouldn't attend the festival even if someone were to hold a knife to her throat. Poor Helena reluctantly agrees to attend the festival, joining Leonard and Caesar, who have left Hamilton behind to avoid his constant nagging. Helena, however, fully comprehends Hamilton's protective nature. She knows that he is aware of the potential dangers that lurk around every corner, and she respects his concerns. As the trio of well-dressed children roams the festival grounds without a chaperone, Helena becomes increasingly aware that someone has been tailing them since they parted ways with Hamilton. They stand out as easy targets for any potential villain. Determined to uncover who is following them, Helena decides to investigate. When she turns around, her sharp gaze lands on the stranger who has been surreptitiously watching her without making any attempt to conceal himself. Helena's curiosity grows as she wonders if this stranger is the one she has been sensing for some time. With determination, she decides to approach the stranger when he suddenly vanishes. As Helena heads towards a long alley, the stranger emerges from the shadows and introduces himself as No. He cryptically mentions that he has been waiting for her to be born, addressing Helena as a monarch. However, No abruptly decides to depart, citing Helena's friends who are searching for her as the reason for his departure. Caesar eventually arrives on the scene, deeply concerned for Helena, and checks up on her. Upon questioning, Caesar discovers that the man Helena confronted had no intentions of harming her. With the decision made to reunite with Hamilton, Caesar takes it upon himself to go and find him. As Caesar departs, Helena breathes a sigh of relief, thinking that everything is now back to normal. However, a sudden realization strikes Helena, and the presence she had been sensing has suddenly disappeared, leading Helena to conclude that this presence had actually been searching for Caesar instead of her. As the realization dawns on Helena, she quickly explains the situation to Leonard, and without wasting a moment, they both begin searching for Caesar. Unfortunately, Caesar is nowhere to be found. Helena becomes increasingly worried and shares her suspicion that Caesar may have been kidnapped and taken to a brothel. In this tense situation, Helena urges Leonard to rush to Hamilton and inform him about what's transpired. She also reassures Leonard that she won't take any risks that might put her in danger. After some persuasion, Leonard agrees to go inform Hamilton, reluctantly leaving Helena behind to search for Caesar. Helena realizes the gravity of the situation and the potential consequences for their family if something bad happens to Caesar. Nevertheless, she decides to approach the matter calmly and cautiously, ensuring Caesar's safety while also waiting for the Viscount to arrive, possibly to provide assistance or guidance. As Helena continues on her quest to find Caesar, she suddenly hears a noise coming from an alley to her left, inside a building. Helena's curiosity piqued as she decides to enter the building through the back door. Once inside, Helena overhears indistinct voices engaged in a sinister discussion about the easiest way to commit murder, suggesting stabbing, and then disposing of the body in the river. Helena realizes that the kidnappers are planning to make their move at night. She begins to strategize, considering her options. However, the situation takes a sudden turn as Caesar resists the kidnappers, prompting them to decide to end his life right then and there. In a quick and calculated move, Helena puts her strategy into action, successfully incapacitating both of the kidnappers. Caesar is both surprised and delighted by Helena's presence, as she emerges as his unexpected savior in this dire situation. In a quick and tense moment, Helena instructs Caesar to run in the opposite direction, and reminds him that she left the back door open. As one of the kidnappers regains consciousness and starts chasing them, Helena and Caesar make a run for it. To their surprise, another man suddenly appears and blocks their path, drawing his sword and slashing it menacingly towards Helena. Bravely, Caesar steps forward, shielding Helena from the sword's blow, resulting in his back being slashed. In a desperate bid to protect herself and Caesar, Helena seizes the opportunity as the second kidnapper raises his hand to strike. She firmly grabs the second kidnapper's hand and swiftly decapitates it. The traumatic encounter leaves Helena with a newfound determination. She had initially wished for a peaceful life in this new existence, but the actions of these kidnappers have shattered that dream. Now, consumed by a thirst for vengeance, Helena is determined to make them pay for their heinous actions. Leonard does everything in his power to help in the situation, and it's clear that neither he nor Hamilton could have arrived any earlier. When Hamilton finally arrives at the scene, he is utterly astonished to find Helena taking care of all the kidnappers by herself. He questions Helena about her identity, to which she simply responds that she's just a genius. The harrowing experience takes a toll on Helena, leaving her bedridden for 3 days. The physician diagnoses her with a sprained ankle and injured arm muscles. The perpetrators of the crime are captured and taken to the capital, facing a grim future ahead. Despite the exhausting ordeal, the most important thing for Helena is that Caesar survives. However, after the incident, Helena receives a lecture from her father about the whole kidnapping incident, likely concerning her safety and the risks she took. 2 days after her complete recovery, Helena's father calls her to discuss his concerns. He expresses worry about Helena, emphasizing that they are aware she is not an ordinary child. In response, Helena candidly asks her father if he is concerned that she will push Leonard aside and assert control over the ducal household because of her exceptional abilities. However, Helena's father reassures her that he knows she has no such desire. Instead, his concern is that Helena might become entangled in situations or responsibilities that are beyond her capacity to handle. Helena's father goes on to mention that even Viscount Noct has expressed interest in taking her to the capital, and providing a skilled mentor to cultivate her into a significant individual. However, he is uncertain if this is the right path for Helena and, therefore, asks her about her own desires and ambitions. Helena reflects on her current life and the lack of things she truly enjoys. Eventually, she responds by expressing her desire to teach swordsmanship to Leonard. Afterward, Helena decides to check on Caesar, but she hesitates and ultimately leaves without entering his room. However, Caesar arrives shortly thereafter. Helena inquires to Caesar about his wound, leading to a conversation that continues for some time between the two friends. During their conversation about marriage, Caesar and Helena's discussion takes an interesting turn when Caesar asks Helena to take care of him if he decides not to get married. As they continue talking, it becomes evident that Caesar is growing annoyed with Helena's constant prodding and teasing, while Helena appears to be enjoying the playful banter. However, Helena begins to notice that something is amiss with Caesar. She decides to inquire about his well-being, specifically if he has been having trouble sleeping. Caesar confirms her suspicions and admits to Helena that he has been experiencing fear. Caesar confides in Helena about his fear of returning to the imperial palace, expressing his belief that the palace is filled with individuals who want to harm him. He admits that he doesn't wish to die so young and vehemently opposes taking up the throne. Understanding Caesar's apprehensions, Helena tries to offer some guidance. She explains to him that even if he renounces his claim to the throne, it won't necessarily guarantee his safety. She emphasizes that without the protection that comes with the throne, he could be even more vulnerable. Caesar, feeling perplexed, seeks Helena's advice on what he should do in such a challenging situation. Helena advises him to take a bold step and become the emperor. She stresses the saying, "Cats don't chase mice that bite back," suggesting that Caesar should respond even more forcefully when he's pushed into a corner. In essence, Helena advises Caesar to assert his dominance and stand up to those who oppose him. Caesar, on the other hand, voices his uncertainty, admitting that he doesn't possess the same strength as Helena. In response, Helena praises Caesar's courage, reminding him of the time he risked his life to save her. She privately reflects on her dedication to standing by Caesar's side and assures him of her unwavering support. Helena suggests that she can aid Caesar in his pursuit of becoming the emperor, and in a reassuring manner, she advises him to find calmness within himself. Caesar expresses his gratitude for Helena's steadfast support. The night is long and filled with fears, but Helena and Caesar hold each other's hands and face this unfortunate situation together. Caesar's wound leaves a scar on his back. Despite Hamilton's efforts to take Helena with him to the capital, Helena's father remains steadfast in his refusal to allow it. As Caesar and Hamilton prepare to leave, Caesar surprises Helena by asking her to teach him swordplay as well. Helena's father warmly welcomes Caesar and expresses his willingness to have him visit anytime. In the midst of what had seemed like a monotonous and uneventful life, chaos suddenly found Helena. That summer, the days felt both too long and too short, marking a period of significant change and uncertainty in her life. After a while, a maid arrives and delivers a letter to Helena, addressed to both her and Leonard. With curiosity, Helena opens the letter, which begins with a respectful greeting to both of them. Furthermore, in the letter, Caesar asks them to prepare his room, as he plans to visit them the following month. Leonard soon arrives and discovers that the letter is from Caesar, and as they read Caesar's message, they reflect on how 3 years have passed since their first summer meeting him. The following day, Helena heads to the merchant's shop to pick up the swords she had ordered for herself and Caesar. Meanwhile, after Leonard's participation in a few local swordsmanship competitions, people start referring to Helena as Lady Instructor. At the shop, the merchant proudly presents the newly crafted swords to Helena. During their conversation, he informs her that the chamberlain from the House of Peril had visited the day before. The House of Peril is in search of a swordsmanship master for their son, and Helena has come to their attention as a potential candidate. Helena suddenly realizes that the son in question is the same misbehaved kid she had encountered a year ago. In response, she asks the merchant to convey a message to the House of Peril. She won't accept pupils who do not display promising talent or a genuine commitment to learning. Helena is genuinely delighted by the newly made sword she has just acquired from the shop. However, her joy is short-lived as, upon leaving the store, a young pickpocket manages to steal a few gold coins from her before making a swift escape. When a maid arrives and offers to report the incident to the local authorities, Helena declines and decides to pursue the pickpocket herself. Meanwhile, the young pickpocket returns to his peers, hoping to share the spoils of his theft. However, they appear dissatisfied with the meager sum of coins he has obtained. This pickpocket turns out to be a boy from the House of Burns. While he engages in an argument with his fellow urchins, Helena silently observes the situation. She is well aware that the pickpocket intends to return the stolen money as a bribe to the older urchins, as she had gone through similar experiences in her past. Helena contemplates the House of Burns and the mention of their daughter by the pickpocket. She wonders if the pickpocket might be an illegitimate child from the House of Burns. Shortly after, Helena intervenes and defeats the leader of the urchins, causing the other urchins to flee in fear. However, the girl from the House of Burns remains behind. Helena offers to give her all the money from her purse if the girl can land a hit on her. In return, she asks the girl to become her assistant. Eventually, the girl, sobbing, gives up and surrenders to Helena. She reveals that she is just an illegitimate child from the House of Burns. Helena learns that the girl's name is Tara. Helena decides to rename her Auget from that point onward. She takes Auget under her wing because she, too, had yearned for someone to show her mercy and kindness in the past. Auget displays remarkable aptitude and swiftly becomes proficient in everything she learns. Her dedication and competence earn her a positive reputation among the servants and the household. Helena is pleased that Auget has adapted so well to life in the ducal estate. However, Helena begins to encounter a problem. Auget serves her so diligently that it becomes almost too much. During their trading, Leonard raises the concern that when Caesar comes to visit, he might not get along well with Auget. Helena dismisses the issue, believing it won't be a problem. She reflects on that ominous feeling she had on that day but chose to ignore it. Soon enough, the day of Caesar's arrival arrives. As he steps out of his carriage, he warmly greets Helena and Leonard. Both are taken aback by how much Caesar has grown, particularly how tall he has become. Helena is truly impressed and in awe when she sees Caesar after such a long time. Caesar, when asked about his height, proudly reveals that he has grown to be over 6 feet tall. Their reunion is filled with playful banter, and they engage in a jovial back and forth. However, after getting annoyed with Caesar's teasing, Helena playfully punches him in the belly. Caesar is delighted to see that nothing has changed in the ducal manner. As their conversation continues, Caesar inquires Helena about Auget and questions her about why she would bring a street urchin into their home. The two of them find themselves in an argument about Auget's presence in the manor. Caesar also expresses his disapproval of Auget and becomes aware of Helena's persistent gaze and decides to inquire about it. Helena playfully responds that she's simply admiring Caesar's thighs and then cheekily asks if she can touch them. Caesar, however, promptly rejects her request. Shortly thereafter, Auget arrives with refreshments for Helena. Caesar wastes no time in asking Auget to leave immediately. Helena, determined to have Auget stay, challenges Caesar's request for her to leave, and in this silent standoff between Auget and Caesar, it's Auget who seems to emerge as the victor. To change the dynamics of the situation, Caesar eventually gives in and allows Helena to touch his thighs. As Helena's hand presses against Caesar's thighs, she is genuinely astonished by the firmness and strength they possess. In the midst of this, Helena and Caesar share an unexpected moment. Their eyes lock, and they both lean in closer to each other. However, Helena abruptly breaks this eye contact and hastily leaves the room, overcome with embarrassment. Helena finds this newfound feeling to be ridiculous and decides that she needs some time to get used to the fact that her pupil, Caesar, has undergone a significant growth spurt. Following their unexpected moment, Helena starts avoiding Caesar. Even during their training sessions, she keeps her distance, avoids making eye contact, and teaches him swordplay lessons from afar. Helena is not doing this intentionally and is baffled by her own behavior, unable to believe that she's avoiding her friend simply because of a growth spurt. She considers this to be the most pathetic thing she has done in her second life. Helena realizes that this has been going on for some time, and as an instructor, she knows she will eventually need to make eye contact with Caesar to effectively teach him. However, she finds it difficult to confront her feelings and break this pattern. Shortly after, Helena notices some disturbance at her window and decides to investigate it. Caesar's presence at Helena's window surprises her, and her initial reaction is to step back into the room. However, Caesar stops her and expresses his desire to talk to her. He enters Helena's room through the window, prompting her to request that he use the door next time. Helena then asks Caesar why he's visiting, and he points out that she has been avoiding him throughout the day. Caesar wonders if he has done something to upset her, but Helena denies this accusation. Caesar shares his concern that this time feels different, as if Helena hates him. In response, Helena explains that she's a bit unsettled by his sudden growth, but reassures Caesar that he doesn't need to worry about this matter anymore. Caesar confides in Helena, expressing his fear that one day, Leonard and Helena might forget about him. In response, Helena immediately apologizes to Caesar and reassures him that she would never abandon her pupil. She swears on her heart that she will never avoid him again, recognizing that she was too insensitive. Caesar then takes a seat on Helena's bed, and when questioned by Helena, he reveals that she has slept in his room once before. Initially uncomfortable with the idea of sharing the same bed as Caesar, Helena decides to sleep somewhere else. However, after some persuasion from Caesar, she agrees to sleep beside him on the same bed. Caesar remarks that this situation reminds him of the old days when Helena used to stay by his side, evoking memories of their past friendship. Caesar adds that if he had known Helena wouldn't like the change in his height, he wouldn't have grown as tall as he did. Helena finds these words coming from Caesar's mouth quite silly, and it reassures her that Caesar's childlike nature remains unchanged. As the night progresses, Helena and Caesar fall into a peaceful sleep, holding each other's hand once again, mending their bond and sharing a sense of comfort and friendship. Helena's swordsmanship lessons are invigorated by Caesar's presence, radiating a warm and welcoming atmosphere. Aware that her own emotions had previously hindered her teaching, Helena redoubles her focus and dedicates extra effort to each session. To her surprise, Caesar displays a remarkable aptitude for learning, progressing much more rapidly than she had anticipated. Just as Helena is engrossed in her busy schedule, Viscount arrives and extends a greeting. Curious about Caesar's progress, Viscount asks Helena about his development. In reply, Helena acknowledges that Caesar's abilities have notably advanced. Additionally, the Viscount expresses his profound appreciation for Helena's amiable relationship with Caesar. He discloses that the ducal manor is the sole location where Caesar feels at ease enough to speak freely and enjoy light-hearted moments with his companions. Continuing, the Viscount confides in Helena that within the confines of the imperial palace, Caesar has acquired the nickname the Grey Wolf due to his fierce and mistrustful disposition. He mentions that Caesar is quick to dismantle anyone who approaches him and steadfastly refuses to keep anyone close. Viscount adds that Caesar's disposition grew even more savage after surviving an assassination attempt, which Helena had yet to hear about. With a sense of urgency, Viscount requests Helena to inform Caesar that she is aware of the assassination attempt and expresses his concerns about the unfavorable conditions prevailing in the imperial palace. Caesar's unwavering determination to ascend to the throne remains steadfast, a fact for which Viscount expresses his gratitude. Furthermore, Viscount conveys his hope that Helena will prove to be an excellent mentor to Caesar. Meanwhile, Helena grapples with regret over her earlier promise to assist Caesar in his pursuit of becoming emperor. She recognizes that Caesar is navigating a challenging phase in his life, yet she is reluctant to re-engage with the imperial family. Determined to take action, Helena summons Caesar to her chambers. There, she unveils her decision to provide specialized training, imparting the less scrupulous and ethically questionable tactics of combat. Without delay, Helena engages in a sparring session with Caesar, pushing him to his limits. These unconventional techniques are skills Helena had learned on her own, through relentless self-training. With sheer dominance, Helena emerges victorious, ending the spar on a resounding note. Helena senses that Caesar may have never confronted such a deadly presence before. She promptly resumes their sparring session, urging him to develop the strength required to potentially defeat her in combat. When Caesar questions the necessity of this, Helena explains that it's the sole path for Caesar to ascend to the throne, drawing a parallel to her own past where she became empress by eliminating her half-siblings. Caesar, without hesitation, retrieves his sword, and another intense spar unfolds between them. Caesar's specialized training continues throughout the summer, and with each passing day, he shows remarkable improvement. However, despite the progress, Caesar and August do not exhibit any signs of warming up to each other. After a few days, they have a tense encounter in the hallway of the ducal manor, resulting in a steadfast staring contest, with neither party willing to back down. In another scene, Caesar appears visibly irritated by August's constant presence around Helena. He angrily demands that August distance herself from Helena. After a while, as August is pouring tea for Helena, she candidly expresses her disdain for Caesar as she cites her knowledge of Caesar's sinister intentions as the basis for her dislike. Furthermore, August confides in Helena that Caesar seems determined to keep her exclusively for himself, and soon Helena begins to realize that both Caesar and August harbor animosity towards each other for the same reason. Each believes the other wants to claim Helena exclusively for themselves. In frustration, Helena asserts to August that she is the one who conquers others, not the other way around. August candidly admits to feeling jealous when the trio of Helena, Leonard, and Caesar enjoys their training sessions together, and in response, Helena asks August if she has any interest in learning swordsmanship. August hesitates initially, but eventually agrees that she does want to learn swordsmanship, upon which Helena offers to send August to a swordsmanship school, though it becomes evident that this isn't what August had in mind. Instead, August expresses her desire to observe Leonard during his training lessons after Helena's refusal of wanting to teach August swordsmanship by herself. After some consideration, Helena agrees to allow August to watch Leonard's training sessions. In a sudden moment of realization, Helena recalls her father's warning about getting involved in something she might not be able to handle. Despite this, the relationship between August and Caesar remains unchanged, and over the course of the summer months, Helena successfully trains Caesar to protect himself from assassination. She feels a profound sense of responsibility and believes she has done everything within her power as an instructor. With this achievement, she finds relief. As another summer draws to a close, Caesar returns to the imperial palace, and Helena plans to continue training her two students in a more relaxed and comfortable manner, while enjoying a leisurely life with Leonard and August. However, her perfect plan unravels 5 months later during winter. Helena and Leonard are visited by an unfamiliar woman who begins by apologizing for her unannounced arrival. The woman introduces herself as Rowena Evergreen and then proceeds to present 2 letters to Helena and Leonard, both of which are from Caesar, following his instructions. Rowena proceeds to elaborate on Caesar's reasoning for sending her instead of someone familiar to Helena. Caesar anticipated that Helena might flee if a familiar face arrived with the invitation. The letters, as it turns out, are invitations to Caesar's crown prince accession ceremony. In a previous discussion back in the ducal state a few days ago, Helena, August, and Leonard had debated the merits of attending a ceremony scheduled for winter where Helena suggests that they might be too young to participate in such a significant event, although she says this somewhat reluctantly. Eventually, Helena decides against attending the ceremony, deeming it as merely a prince accession ceremony. While in the current moment, Helena expresses her reluctance to Rowena about attending the ceremony as well. In response, Rowena informs Helena that Caesar was well aware of her potential refusal, which is why she's been instructed to encourage Helena to read her invitation thoroughly. Upon thoroughly reading the invitation, Helena comes across the section where Caesar mentions her caressing his thighs. In a fit of anger and frustration, she impulsively tosses the invitation into a nearby fire, stating that she can't attend the ceremony without a proper invitation. Rowena, however, calmly informs Helena that Caesar had anticipated such a reaction and, as a result, had instructed Rowena to prepare extra invitations for both Helena and Leonard. Helena, feeling somewhat helpless in the face of this, reluctantly admits that she's looking forward to the ceremony, all while seething with anger over Caesar's childish antics. Rowena then takes charge, mentioning that she will oversee Helena and Leonard's debuts into society. She presents a catalog to them, showcasing dress options for the upcoming ceremony. With Rowena's presence, Helena's carefully crafted plan appears to have crumbled, leaving her frustrated and determined to make Caesar pay for his behavior. On the day of the accession ceremony, Helena and Leonard are dropped off at the banquet by their parents, who have their own important commitments to attend to. As they enter the event, both siblings sense an unwelcoming atmosphere. However, Helena is determined to meet Caesar before departing. Leonard, seeking assurance, asks Helena if he is her favorite person, to which she affirms. For Leonard's sake, Helena decides to postpone scolding Caesar to ensure his smooth debut in high society. Having attended numerous parties in her previous life, Helena has grown weary of such gatherings, and in accordance with her father's advice, she opts to stand quietly in a corner until it's time to leave. However, her solitude is disrupted when, 30 minutes later, a lady accidentally trips and spills wine all over Helena's beautiful dress, leaving her thoroughly annoyed by the seemingly relentless streak of bad luck she's experiencing. As the party unfolds, one timeless rule remains unchanged in these social gatherings. People are invariably drawn to those who are beautiful and hold positions of power. Consequently, a crowd begins to gather around Leonard and Helena, where Helena observes that Leonard is handling the situation admirably. Feeling that she has been present for a sufficient amount of time, Helena decides it's an appropriate moment to slip away for a break. However, as she expresses her intention, men from various households start pressuring her to be escorted by them. Helena finds herself unable to conjure any convincing excuses. Just as she begins to feel overwhelmed, Leonard comes to her rescue, informing the men that he will personally escort Helena. Helena feels a sense of relief as she steps away from the crowd, and she takes a moment to express her gratitude to Leonard, who appears genuinely concerned about her well-being. Leonard takes things a step further, expressing his concern for Helena's well-being and encouraging her to inform him if anyone becomes a nuisance during the event. Helena appreciates this shift in Leonard's attitude, sensing his protective instincts at play. As Leonard heads off to fetch drinks for both of them, Helena decides to take a moment to relax. However, her brief respite is abruptly interrupted when a group of ladies approaches her, with one introducing herself as Ulrica Brandt. Helena is well aware of the Brandt family, who are collateral relatives of the Valeras, and she knows about the long-standing history of conflict between their family and Caesar. What's more, Ulrica had played a significant role in obstructing Caesar's path to becoming the crown prince, making her presence all the more intriguing and potentially contentious for Helena. Helena is taken aback by Ulrica's unexpected visit and inquires to Ulrica about the purpose behind her appearance. Ulrica, in response, seeks confirmation from Helena about the rumors regarding her close friendship with Caesar, which Helena affirms. In a sly move, Ulrica leans in closer to Helena and offers some unsolicited advice, hinting that Helena should be mindful of her social standing. To make her point more overt, Ulrica deliberately spills wine all over Helena's dress. She then mentions having a spare dress and invites Helena to accompany her to change. Helena realizes that reacting with anger at this moment would only label her as narrow-minded. So, she decides on a different approach and pretends to accidentally spill wine on Ulrica's dress in return. With a wry smile, Helena expresses her gratitude that Ulrica brought a spare dress with her. She goes on to mention that the dress was personally selected by Caesar himself. After this exchange, Helena bids farewell to Ulrica, leaving her absolutely furious with Helena as she departs. Using the wine stain as a convenient excuse, Helena decides against returning to the main hall, contemplating the motives behind Ulrica's recent actions. She ponders whether Ulrica might have romantic feelings for Caesar, which could explain her attempt to provoke a conflict with Helena. As Helena engages in her thoughts, the announcer informs the attendees of Caesar's arrival, and Helena notices the snowfall once again. And amid these musings, Helena also reflects on her lack of interest in fashion, as she has never been inclined towards clothing or accessories, not even in her past life. Before Helena became the Empress Regnant, she often engaged in street fights and sparring sessions, and even during her rule, she frequently donned armor instead of regular attire, so fashion and style have never been her primary concern. Helena, despite not harboring many fond memories of her time in the imperial palace, strangely finds herself missing those days. Shortly thereafter, Caesar finally locates Helena, explaining that he had been searching for her. Soon, Helena asks Caesar the reason of his appearance, and Caesar responds that he came to visit her. Helena then offers the excuse that she stayed inside due to her soiled clothing, and in return, Caesar speculates that Helena might have been avoiding the party because she found it bothersome. Recognizing that Caesar is the focal point of the event, Helena questions whether it's appropriate for him to be there. Caesar reassures her, mentioning that he's already greeted the crown, and taking a moment away won't be a concern. Helena also notices that Caesar seems fatigued from all the preparations, making the reality of the situation sink in. As their conversation continues, Helena playfully points out that Caesar has grown much taller than her. In response, Caesar leans slightly to be at the same eye level as Helena. Caesar's proximity to Helena prompts her to instinctively push him away, leading Caesar to inquire if he should kneel down. Helena confirms, and Caesar obediently kneels before her. Helena, feeling somewhat shy, covers Caesar's eyes with her hand as she prepares to make a birthday wish. She finds it challenging to express her sentiments while looking directly into his eyes. However, she manages to wish Caesar a happy birthday, and in response, he thanks her. Caesar also shares that he has been eager to hear these words from Helena. Helena tries to downplay the significance of her words, suggesting that Caesar can hear them from many others. In response, Caesar insists that it only holds meaning when those words come from Helena's mouth. He moves closer to Helena, expressing that he was born for her. Helena picks up on the emotion in Caesar's words, and in that moment, she can't help but embrace him. With 3 days of free time after Caesar's party, Helena plans to spend it catching up on sleep. Leonard, on the other hand, intends to visit the Order of Knights during his break, which means Helena would be the only person in the villa since her parents are preoccupied with important meetings. Helena's intention to enjoy a peaceful, nap-filled afternoon is disrupted when Caesar unexpectedly arrives at the ducal manor. Caesar explains that he heard about Leonard's visit to the Order of Knights and assumed that Helena would be lazing about all day. He came to keep her company, but Helena's irritation overwhelms her, leading her to angrily push Caesar out of her room. On his birthday, Caesar requests that Helena spend time with him as a gift. Despite her reluctance, Helena finds herself compelled to agree to Caesar's request. Helena, feeling pressured to comply with something she'd rather avoid, reluctantly finds herself in a situation she opposes. While she gets ready to accompany Caesar, he takes her hand, expressing his desire for her not to run away while they spend time together. Despite her reservations, Helena reluctantly agrees to let Caesar have his way for the day as a birthday gift. While they are out together, Helena inquires why they are only shopping for her. Caesar admits that he derives more enjoyment from shopping for Helena than he does for himself. Caesar's desire to bring Helena home with him catches her off guard, prompting her to reflect on how Caesar has evolved into a shrewd and calculating individual over the years. Helena has been aware of a deterioration in Caesar's personality as time has passed. During their hangout, Caesar asks Helena about the previous day's party, specifically inquiring if any young lords had made advances toward her. Helena denies any such advances, stating that nothing of the sort occurred. She briefly mentions her encounter with Ulrica Brandt at the party but quickly changes the topic when she detects a shift in Caesar's demeanor. Without delay, Helena presents the gift she had prepared for Caesar, originally intended for the party. Caesar's genuine excitement upon seeing the gift is evident. However, Helena downplays its significance, suggesting that it's not a particularly important gift. Upon opening the present, Caesar discovers a scarf hand-knitted by Helena herself. His excitement is evident, and he goes on to express that this is the best gift he has ever received. Helena, who knows Caesar well, recognizes that he is genuinely happy with the gift. Caesar even goes as far as to say that he would put his life on the line for the scarf, emphasizing the depth of his appreciation and attachment to this thoughtful gesture. On that night, Helena and Caesar returns to the villa in a carriage. The contrast between the rural Faresca duchy and the capital's brilliant and dazzling nightscape was stark. Helena has witnessed countless nights come and go in the city 500 years ago, but this particular night strikes her as even more beautiful. As they near the villa, Helena attempts to wake Caesar, who is deeply asleep. When her initial efforts failed, Helena moves closer to him to wake him up more effectively. Unexpectedly, the carriage hits a pothole, leading to an accidental moment where Helena and Caesar's lips touches. However, it is far from a romantic encounter, as the jolt from the pothole nearly knocks out Helena's front teeth. While Caesar continually yelled at Helena, insisting that something didn't count, Helena is utterly confused, not understanding what Caesar was referring to. The moment the carriage comes to a stop at the villa, Helena hurriedly exits, ignoring Caesar's request to wait. Without any further delay, Caesar continues on his way. As Helena ventures inside the villa, she unexpectedly encounters Leonard, who immediately notices her swollen lip. In order to avoid feeling embarrassed, Helena quickly improvises an excuse, telling Leonard that she had accidentally bitten her lip due to the carriage's bumpy ride. Leonard also notices that Helena's face has a hint of redness, and he kindly offers to summon a physician. Helena blushes at the thought that her embarrassment might be so obvious, but she manages to regain her composure and assures Leonard that she is perfectly fine. Helena's irritation still smolders when she recollects the inadvertent lip contact with Caesar. 2 days later, the capital lays beneath a thick snowy blanket, trapping Helena and Leonard away from home for a while longer. Meanwhile, within the hall room, Hamilton seethes with anger at Caesar, who has decided to work up a sweat during crucial moments leading up to the accession. Seeking Helena's input on the matter, despite her lack of knowledge about the particulars, she wastes no time in laying the blame squarely on Caesar, offering her opinion that it is undeniably his fault. The tension in the room hangs heavy as Helena's frustration and the Hamilton's displeasure adds to the already frosty atmosphere. Furthermore, Hamilton shares his concerns while conversing about the day Caesar returned home with a swollen lip, and he swiftly notices Helena sporting a similar injury. Abruptly steering the conversation in a different direction, Helena rises and suggests presenting a rare book to Hamilton. Caesar, expressing a desire to join them, articulates his wish, but Helena promptly declines, causing visible frustration for Caesar. Helena's immediate thoughts turn to deciphering the source of Caesar's anger, leaving her pondering the cause of his emotional reaction. Hamilton expresses deep gratitude towards Helena for introducing him to these invaluable books. Meanwhile, Helena sits in contemplation, trying to understand why Caesar had been so angry, especially since she had brought Hamilton there with the intention of keeping their incident a secret. She recalls the moment when Caesar had yelled at her, stating that it doesn't count, and wonders about its true meaning. In an unexpected turn of events, Helena asks Hamilton if it's acceptable for him to be present, given that the accession is imminent. Hamilton acknowledges that he probably shouldn't be there. When Helena inquires further, Hamilton explains that he had made an excuse to Caesar to be there on that particular day. Moreover, Helena inquires of Hamilton whether he brought Caesar with him. Hamilton responds, revealing Caesar's heightened anxiety regarding the impending ceremony, which has led to sleepless nights. Consequently, Caesar sought the comfort of a place where he could find solace, and that happened to be Helena's home. As Hamilton starts explaining the rationale behind the winter accession ceremony instead of the customary New Year timing, Helena interjects, continuing with her own theory. She posits that the rushed ceremony's primary reason could be the imminent ascent of the imperial consort to the position of empress. This, in turn, would bolster the House of Valera's influence significantly. Moreover, Helena surmises that the new empress might prioritize her own young son for the title of crown prince over Caesar. This potential shift in power dynamics gives Helena pause for thought, and she contemplates the repercussions it might have on Caesar's position and their shared future. The intricacies of imperial politics begin to unravel before her, leaving her with a growing sense of unease about what lies ahead for Caesar and herself in this ever-evolving political landscape. Furthermore, as their conversation unfolds, Hamilton offers to become Helena's source of information. His motivation for sharing recent events with Helena is to express gratitude for her introducing him to the valuable books she possesses. Shortly after this exchange, Helena steps out of her room, only to discover Caesar, of all places, sleeping soundly on an uncomfortable sofa, despite residing in the grandest and most opulent building in the empire. Caesar awakens, seemingly sensing Helena's presence, and they engage in conversation. Caesar notices that Helena's injury hasn't yet healed, and in an unexpected turn of events, he leans in and kisses her. After their initial kiss, Caesar, with Helena's consent, kisses her passionately once more. They hold each other tightly, reluctant to part. When the snow finally stops, Leonard and Helena get ready to leave as planned. Hamilton and Rowena come to say goodbye, but Caesar doesn't, which upsets Helena. When Leonard asks, she attributes her sadness to missing Auget, concealing the true reason. 3 summers pass since Caesar became the crown prince. 3 years ago, when Leonard first visited the Order of the Knights, the commander recognized Leonard's talent that day, leading him to attend the military academy. This means that Helena can only see him once a month. Caesar still visits the ducal manor every summer, but his stays are shorter than before. As he gains more power as the crown prince, he loses some of his freedom. Auget becomes singularly focused on mastering swordsmanship, with blisters on her hands that never seem to fade. It appears that Auget believes this is the only way to forge a connection with Helena, although Helena feels a bit sorry for her. Auget's skill improves day by day, and now the 4th summer after Caesar's accession is here. Caesar makes sure to visit the ducal state without fail this summer, but he brings something rather bothersome with him: a swordsmanship tournament hosted by the imperial family, an event that occurs every 4 years. In response to Helena's query, Caesar dismisses the competition as essentially a frivolous display for aristocrats, more of a talent show than anything substantial. He goes on to explain that the tournament's rules have been modified to allow participation from individuals without noble titles. Helena quickly grasps the potential opportunity this presents for Leonard. However, just as they discuss this, Auget arrives bearing a chocolate tart for Helena. As anticipated, a spirited exchange unfolds between Auget and Caesar. Before long, Helena voices her concern about whether Auget can indeed take part in the competition, to which Auget eagerly declares her readiness to participate. Furthermore, Helena discovers that the crown prince is obliged to participate in this tournament, which explains why future crown prince usually begins their training at a very young age. The revelation deepens her understanding of the intricacies of the event, and its significance in the lives of those in line for the throne. Furthermore, Helena conveys her best wishes to Auget, Caesar, and Leonard for the upcoming competition. Later that night, as Caesar quietly prepares to leave, he is halted by Helena. Upon her inquiry, Caesar apologizes for not being able to spend the entire summer at the ducal estate. Although Helena and Caesar are still somewhat uneasy around each other following their previous kissing incident, neither of them brings up the matter. Caesar then inquires if Helena has received any invitations from Ulrica, to which she responds in the negative. In addition to this, Helena encourages Caesar to confide in her if anything is troubling him and encourages him to be himself. In response, Caesar suddenly embraces Helena and holds her in a warm hug, expressing his emotions through this heartfelt gesture. And that wraps up another thrilling recap. But the adventure doesn't end here. Prepare to be shocked by our second recap's unexpected plot twists, and witness the evolution of your favorite characters. Subscribe to our channel if you want more twists, turns, and heart-pounding stories. Stay tuned for our next recap.